free agency. So what can we take away from the bevy of transactions? Is the roster better off for it? And what do you, the fans, think of the state of this team heading into the second week of free agency? Well, don't worry. We are going to talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, as always presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. I'm Drake Wally, co-host of the show, deputy editor for the channel, and I am joined by none other than fellow deputy editor and co-host of this show, Sean Ackerman. Sean, dude, how are you doing? And just overall, what do you take away from this first week of free agency? There's people that are pissed about it. There's people that are happy, and everywhere in between.
I'm doing good, Drake. I'm glad to be on again after I missed last week. But this past week has been filled with news and business, and I mean, really, Colts have let a lot of guys walk, and that kind of surprises me. At least when you think about Chris Ballard, what he's done in the past, he's usually trying to bring back all of his guys, but it seems that this year he's maybe looking to free agency more. But even then, the Colts haven't made that many signings, so I think there's still a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, and people kind of miss the fact that free agency goes almost all the way up to the season. You can sign anybody at any point. Like even in the middle of the season, you can sign people. We've seen it happen with guys like Justin Houston. That's the last guy to have over 10 sacks for the Colts. Guys like Stephon Gilmore played incredible in 2022. And then Xavier Rhodes, he played great at cornerback. So people got to try to slow down a little bit. I understand that, we'll get into each one of these moves since the Kwity Paye departure. And there's 12 total, whether we're talking about re-signings, new signings, or if, you're allowing a guy to walk, we are going to cover it. But yeah, people get a little bit bent out of shape when it's not some superstar name. And as we've seen with guys in the past, you just need the right scene. You just need the right, layout and the right fit, and you can get yourself a heck of a player. We got some people jumping in here into the chat. So guys, as we're doing the show and as we touch on these players, let us know what your thoughts are. Let us have a conversation with you, because this is just the beginning. There is going to be so much more, and pretty much every week we're probably going to be covering new moves, but we'll just jump right into it. So obviously we saw, guys like Kwity Paye leave the team. We had Alec Pierce get re-signed. You had Daniel Jones get re-signed. Is there, like, overall, I guess, what's your general feel of those the first week? Like, do you think that there were any misfires? Do you think that maybe there was a guy last week that they shouldn't have allowed to walk? Like, just a real brief recap. Those were the big three, but how do you feel about that first week of free agency? Because they got the big two re-signed in Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones, and pretty much everything else from there, is to pretty much round out the roster.
Yeah, I think, I wasn't surprised to see that Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce both came back. I think that was always the plan, because as I've mentioned before, like, Chris Ballard has to survive with this team. I mean, he's dedicated himself to this team. It's what he saw it's the group that he saw had the most success. And so he's going to try to repeat that success. And it makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of money, and a lot of money in the future as well. Like, if these two don't work out, Daniel Jones is still on the books for, I believe his cap hit next year is about $46 million. The year after, it's $26 million. So if Daniel Jones doesn't work out and he can't recover from his Achilles, that'll be its own issue. In terms of Alec Pierce, it is a tad surprising, but I do believe that he was just using all the interest he had to get more money from the Colts, like the maximum amount of money that the Colts were willing to offer him. And that makes sense. It's a negotiating tactic. He's a player who wants to make as much money as possible. I think one player who I'm surprised the Colts let walk is Nick Cross. I mean, Washington signed him to 2 years, $14 million. It's really not that big of a contract, especially considering the contracts they give out to some of the defensive ends, like Arden Key. They gave him 2 year, $20 million, and Michael Clemons, they gave a 3-year deal worth like $17 million. And I mean, realistically, one of those guys, the salary cap that they just ate up could have been used on Nick Cross. And I believe Nick Cross was a really big part of the Colts defense last year, especially in the run game, really good in the box. So I don't know. I think they could have brought him back, but it wouldn't be surprising if they tried to use Hunter Wohler there next season. I know that's a guy you're big on.
Yeah, and the thing is, it sucks in the NFL because there's far more than, like, we'll get to Cross, but there's always context. It's not like they were like, you know what, the hell with Nick Cross. They weren't thinking that. Obviously, one heck of a football player, but there's scheme fit, and then there's do we think that there's a cheaper guy out there that's looking for an opportunity that by the tape we've seen that he could potentially be that replacement and might be able to have more upside? There's so many questions to answer when it comes to that kind of stuff. I can see people jumping into the chat here. They basically reflected what you were talking about there. But guys, we are going to get to all of them. There's 12 total, so we're just going to dive right into this. The first one that is really tough for me personally, because this guy went through so much mental. He went through a lot of mental strife and a lot of things he was dealing with mentally that in the 2024 season removed him from the last 5 or 6 games. Of course, came back 2025, looked great until, of course, he gets hurt again. And that's Braden Smith, who, of course, we won't get into too many contract details. We have too many players to hit here. Mm-hmm. Braden Smith goes to the Houston Texans. Of course, it has to be the Texans. This is a team that desperately needs offensive line help. They're getting a guy who has been a staple. He's never made a Pro Bowl, but he's played at a Pro Bowl level. So what were your thoughts on this signing? Are you surprised that the Colts allowed him to walk? And do you think that this could be an issue not having Braden Smith on the field in 2026?
I'm not surprised they let him walk. I think that was pretty much always going to be in the plans. I think drafting Jalen Travis last year is exactly why they let him walk. I think, Jalen Travis, he doesn't have the starting, he doesn't have the experience yet, but at some point you got to put him in the game. And he has the size that would translate to the NFL level. So I think having Jalen Travis as that backup to fill in, he played those last few games, so that really helps, I think, him prepare for next season. He knows what to expect now. So I'm not shocked. It does suck that he's going to the Texans where they really need offensive line help. But that being said, Braden Smith has a long history of injuries. Hopefully he's able to complete a season there. I saw something about how the Texans could use him at left guard, which would be interesting, which is where he played guard in college. Mm-hmm. So if they don't want to use him at tackle, they could use him on the inside. But it'll be interesting to see how he plays there. I think he'll be a good fit, though, at least for a season or two with C.J. Stroud under center.
Yeah, I mean, Braden Smith has missed an absolutely outrageous amount of games. I mean, he just has. He's dealt with injuries that are lower extremity injuries, upper extremity injuries. He's had concussions. Of course, we'll give him a complete pass on the personal, side of it.
Oh, yeah.
Also, guys, if you haven't seen the interview that Braden Smith did, I think it was with the Indianapolis Star, where he detailed what he went through and how he got on the other side of it. I promise you should go check it out. I think it can speak to every single one of us that struggle with anything in our lives. But this is a guy that his time was borrowed, I think, as soon as he got hurt. Because Jalen Travis, I mean, dude, a 4th rounder. Blake Freeland's a 4th rounder. You can't put your future into a 4th round pick. Yeah. Tanner Bortolini's a 4th rounder. So, Jalen Travis went out there and played fantastic. I mean, he played absolutely wonderful football those last 4 games of the season. He's also blocking for Phillip Rivers in 3 of those games. I mean, that's a guy who couldn't move in his prime, let alone coming off the couch at 44. So I think that one made a lot of sense. I think that Braden Smith's going to have a really good opportunity with the Texans. But Indianapolis is losing a pillar of the franchise. And I personally am high on Jalen Travis, so I wasn't too sad to see Braden Smith go as a player. as a person, though. He's going to be hard to replace in the locker room, but I think Travis is up for it. So this next one, we're actually starting with the departures, everybody. So this next one is definitely going to spark the most conversation, as we were just mentioning here. And you bred him as soon as you bring him in at age 20, which is unheard of to draft a player that young. Doesn't do well in his first season, gets sat for Rodney McLeod. Then he gets eased into action in 2023. Then the last 2 seasons he erupts, and that's Nick Cross. Now, this one I was pretty shocked about. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if this was an Anarumo thing. Lou Anarumo has shown he has some outrageous pull. I mean, guys like Charvarius Ward, Lou Anarumo. Guys like Cam Bynum, Lou Anarumo. Justin Wally, Lou Anarumo. I mean, this guy has a way of getting the guys he wants and the players he wants. He even got Jermaine Pratt signed to the Colts. What we kind of talked about it, but dive a little deeper for me, Sean. Like, what did you think of this departure and the Colts not re-signing him? Because, like you said, I mean, it was a very cheap deal. In fact, if we were talking $6 to $11 million a year, it literally was the lowest end of that spectrum.
Yeah, I was expecting him to get a little more interest in free agency, though. At the same time, the safety market just never is very big. It's really, I think the way that some of the general managers see it is it's probably one of the easier positions to play in terms of you're not processing as much when you're on the field. You're looking at the quarterback, but you're the valve, like you're the safety. Like, I don't know. The way I want to say it is they're doing a lot, but there's a lot of guys that can also do that because you have to be athletic. You have to cover both sides of the field. You have to be quick, but you also have to be aware and have a football IQ. I think Nick Cross, the IQ part, he really grew into that in those last 2 years. I think he always had the athletic traits, but I think learning the NFL level he grew into, and I'm surprised that the Colts let him walk after using him as well as they did this season, especially under Anarumo. I feel like Nick Cross was used more as a blitzer. I think he had 2.5 blitzes under 2.5 sacks under Anarumo. So, I think Cross will have success in Washington. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Colts replace him.
Yeah, and by the way, Teresa, the reason that we're cutting in and out on Facebook, I just got the notification is because of Facebook. So if it's happening, we do apologize, but Facebook's having its own issues right now with streaming everything today. So, but yeah, so Nick Cross is interesting because he is not the best coverage safety. Now, he's a strong safety, and typically strong safeties are far more of the box guys. They're playing closer to the line of scrimmage. They're sent more on blitzes. I thought Nick Cross put together a hell of a season. 2024 might have been a little bit better with turnovers and tackles. That's because guys were getting past Zaire Franklin and EJ Speeds across, had no choice but to go up and make tackles. But a 2-year deal worth up to $14 million. And like you said, I love that you said that, Sean, because you can almost, unless you've got Antoine Winfield or just an absolute freak of nature at safety, you can replace a safety. You really can. And I'm not saying that Cam Bynum is the kind of guy you could just say goodbye and go find yourself another Cam Bynum. He's a little bit on the upper tier, but Nick Cross is at times a liability in one area, and that's communication. There's times where he does not, and that was the biggest thing with him in his rookie year. He just does not sometimes have an efficiency with like communicating changes and blitzes and with audibles. He just sometimes isn't like in the same wavelength with the rest of his teammates, and that's led up huge plays. And Lou Anarumo is a veteran. I mean, he's the kind of guy that doesn't put up with that kind of stuff. But this one is definitely the most curious. What do you think it was, Sean? Because that contract, $7 million a year, that is cheap. That's cheapo money in the NFL for a guy that's 24, has 4 years of experience, and the last 2 seasons has looked like he's on nothing but an upward arrow.
Yeah, it's surprising. I think what it was is that Anarumo just wanted it his own guy. You know, he wasn't the one who was here to draft Cross, and so I think he sees the talent that is on his roster. I think he believes in Hunter Wohler. I think he liked what he saw probably last year for a good bit, and then I believe at the same time, like the two signings that were just made, Owens and Thomas. I think I don't think Owens will be. He does have starting experience. He started for the Texans for a good bit, and then Thomas. I think that Ballard maybe liked what he saw out of him in the 7 games that he did play last year. He had 3 interceptions. I mean, that's hard to do in 7 games. That being said, I personally haven't watched his film, so I don't know exactly what he's going to bring to the table, or if Ballard and Anarumo think he can compete for that starting spot. I think the draft is another option, but at the same time, you can't fill all your starting spots with rookies. So, you know, when you look like at safety, like that'll be an issue, but it's also going to be an issue probably at linebacker, maybe on the defensive line. So I think Cross just didn't fit exactly what Anarumo wanted in a strong safety. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up winning that starting job.
Yeah, and the thing about Hunter Wohler, last year, I know he didn't see regular season action, but my goodness, the way that the area I look when I want to evaluate Hunter Wohler is, first off, you're a 7th-round pick. You're not expected to do a damn thing. If anything, you're a special teams guy. That's what a 7th-rounder usually does, unless they're a quarterback. You're going to be on special teams. Hunter Wohler goes in there against Lamar Jackson and Cooper Rush in joint practices with the Baltimore Ravens. He picks off Jackson. He picks off Rush. And each one of those was different. It was as a safety and as a linebacker. I mean, that is fantastic. And so I really do believe that they are looking at Hunter Wohler. I know it's crazy to think about this. Being a 7th-rounder coming off of a Lisfranc injury that derailed his season, I think they're looking at him right now, man, as a starter potential type player. And I think that they really expect a lot out of him. And we'll get to another signing later that could mean some competition. But before we do that, we got a whole bunch of comments here. You know, we'll just hit on a couple of these. Spooks Hill Joe, longtime viewer, thank you so much for joining in, man. I don't think Anthony Richardson is going anywhere. Hot button topic right there. They need another quarterback since Jones is uncertain for the first game. They see he'll be ready by opening day, but I'm not buying that. So before we even dive into that, Sean, what do you think about what Spooks Hill says here?
As much as I personally love Richardson and would like him to stay, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that once you agree to seek a trade, I just don't know how much longer your life's going to last. I think that they're fine with Riley Leonard as well behind him. Even then, they could sign a cheap veteran quarterback. I do think that there is a chance that Jones isn't ready by week 1. I mean, it's hard to I don't want to speculate about any injuries, but any setback in rehab, he's on that tight of a deadline where any setback will push him back maybe another month, you know? So hopefully he'll be ready to go by then.
Yeah, definitely understand where you're coming from there, Spooks Hill. So you got to think about a little bit of context here, though. So let's hypothetically say Daniel Jones can't play first 2 games, okay? First, you have to realize this is a make or break year for Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. They cannot afford – Carly Ursay-Gordon didn't lay out a bullet point list. But I'm assuming they have to win the division, make the playoffs, and win a playoff game. I think those 3 things are non-negotiables. If you don't have Daniel Jones week 1, I wouldn't even think that they lean on Riley Leonard. I think that they would go and sign somebody like maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe a guy like I'm looking at the free agents right here. I mean, you really don't have much else. I mean, you've got maybe a guy like Zach Wilson. I don't know. I think that maybe your Tyrod Taylor is another option, but you're probably going to go with a veteran who you think can just get you by. unless they believe in Riley Leonard. But even then, if Jones can't suit up, you need a quarterback behind him or in front of him. So I just don't think that's Richardson. I think that they're done. I think that Anthony Richardson is done, and it's unheard of in the NFL to say, hey, you can go seek a trade and your representation can go help you find that trade. Oh, you know what, guys? No, because in that case, he would just request his release. And I don't think the Colts would give it to him. That would just start a whole bunch of drama. So respect what you said there, Spooks Hill, absolutely. But the Anthony Richardson era it's done. It's a formality. The only thing missing is a trade at this point. And then this is a good one. Sign Juwan Jennings and Brian Robinson, then go all defense in the draft. Brian Robinson, no. I think that they're going to lean on the running back room they have. If anything, they'll bring back Amir Abdullah. He looked pretty decent at times. Juwan Jennings, that's an interesting one, though. I actually wrote a piece on 3 free agents that could start. And do you really want to turn to a receiver in the draft to replace Michael Pittman? That was who I had, was Juwan Jennings, who's going to cost between $15 and $20 million a year. But what do you think about Juwan Jennings? Because he's had a couple of good seasons in San Francisco. I would assume they're going to keep him because otherwise you basically have Ricky Pearsall, who has struggled with injuries.
Yeah, I think with their whole at the same time, I think their whole situation with Brandon Ayuk, they're paying him $30 million a year, and he's not on the team. So I think they might be maybe a little worried to give another big receiver contract for a guy who doesn't turn up playing that well. At the same time, I think Juwan Jennings is a good player. He played really well. He's a good red zone target for the 49ers last year, especially down the stretch. I think Jennings would fit in well, and I think he's the type of player very similar, like in stature to Pittman, yep. Where he can be that intermediary guy, and he's like chunking up yards. He can get yards after the catch as well. So I think that would be an interesting signing. I think if you're going to replace Pittman, that's probably the best free agent possible to do that.
Yeah, well, we'll jump right back into the departures here. So this next one, Samson Ebukam, he goes to the Falcons. Not really. Look, the big 3 that we talked about leaving the Colts, Pay, Ebukam, Lewis. Lewis is the last guy. Like at this point, you can tell that they're like, okay, we are going to redo this entire edge room. They've done a whole lot of nothing right now. But, Ebukam had 9.5. In fact, he is proof, ladies and gentlemen, that you don't have to be a big name. Because when he was signed to the Colts, everyone was like, okay, he's a rotational guy, but you got to keep in mind he was playing with a murderer's row of players in Los Angeles. Then you got guys like Nick Bosa that he's playing with in San Francisco. So Ebukam didn't really get a chance to shine. He gets a starting gig with the Colts, leads the team in sacks, fantastic in run defense, fantastic at pressures. He was like top 5 in everything. Rips that Achilles, which kind of scares you about Daniel Jones, but he rips that Achilles, comes back, he's like a shell of himself. 2 sacks, the writing was on the wall. What'd you think of this one here? Because I think Atlanta is a good spot for him because I think that they're trying to boost that edge rush.
Yeah, it's not shocking that they let Ebukam left. I mean, I thought there was talk of him even being a cap casualty last offseason. So it's really not surprising. And I think that the Colts are just trying to go an entirely different direction. I mean, the pass rush didn't look absolutely atrocious, but it was pretty bad last year. I think it just wasn't very consistent, especially in those last 7 games. I believe like the last 4 games, Colts only had, I believe, 5 sacks or something like that, or maybe 4 sacks. So it just wasn't good enough. And when you have players that are aging like this, Chris Ballard is saying he wants to get younger and faster. Ebukam is just not that direction. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and, he's one of those guys that after an Achilles tear, and again, that's why it makes you so wary about Daniel Jones. Of course, the Colts didn't have a choice. It was either Jones or you're going to push for Kyler Murray. So Ebukam was unfortunately the example of what happens when you can't recover fully from an Achilles tear. And I know you can say whatever you want. Hey, he had a down season. Oh, no. He had a whole season to get back up to speed and get fully healthy, and it just wasn't there anymore. The pop or the explosiveness, the pop, the power. Ebukam definitely, I think, is in the twilight of his career, but he'll serve mostly as a rotational guy. So this next one, I actually remember writing the piece on this, and people were putting comments that they were happy that the Colts didn't re-sign this guy. And of course, that's Rodney Thomas the second. Poor guy, seventh rounder out of Yale, which is not a football school at all. It's not even a sports school, really. And all he does is go out there and lead the team in picks his first season. And I remember that year, and I remember thinking, wow, they found themselves a draft gem. Go back and look at some of the tape, though. Man, those interceptions, it's so weird. They were almost all four just gimme balls. And I remember one of them was Kirk Cousins completely misreading Justin Jefferson. And he, instead of throwing a post, he threw a streak. And I mean, on the television, it's just Rodney Thomas catching a punt. So, I mean, Rodney Thomas had a very weird rookie season, and I think people got a little too excited. Really fell off. Not the greatest depth piece, at least not in this defense. Were you surprised by this? Do you think that it's really going to hurt the Colts that much? Because personally, I think that I think you can easily and probably upgrade a depth piece, that is better than Rodney Thomas.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with Rodney Thomas, a ton of missed tackles, and
bad.
I think that when you're looking at a safety, you need someone you're confident can stop that last guy if it comes to that, And it doesn't surprise me. I mean, at least he's landing in Seattle. It's good for him. I mean, if the Super Bowl champions want you, I would go there, So even if I just don't think that was ever in the cards for Thomas to return. He did carve out a nice role for himself in Indy, and he got a lot of time. So to become a seventh round pick, play in the NFL for as long as he has, I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself. But now that he's earned himself another contract, hats off to him. But I think that the Colts, his time was done here.
Yeah, and depth pieces, guys that are rotational. It's always one of those things where you see them go in free agency, and you're like, oh, no big deal. And the Colts, the team, whoever, you still got to replace that guy. Like, you can't just be like, oh, he's gone, we're good. No, you still have to replace him, and we'll get to someone later who I think the Colts had their eye on, and it made them a little more comfortable letting go of Rodney Thomas. But yeah, at the end of the day, this guy, the biggest issue was the missed tackles. And as a safety, you simply cannot be bad at tackling because like you said, you are that last line of defense. You're the third level. So this one hurts a little bit. This next one, I wrote a piece. I wrote I wrote this piece for us on the channel. Unsung hero, wildly good special teamer. I mean, just an animal on special teams. And he filled in nicely as a starter at times. And that's Segun Olubi, who for his career had 16 special teams tackles, 2 blocked punts. During the 2023 season, he filled in, I think it was for Zaire Franklin or some capacity. He filled in against the Carolina Panthers. He filled in against the Houston Texans in that game where, Gardner Minshew and Tyler Goodson simply couldn't get it done to help the Colts get to the playoffs. I think that this one is bigger than it looks because special teams are huge and the Colts really preach it. Brian Mason lost himself an ace here. What do you think about this one? Because it also means that now they have even more bodies to fill in the linebacker room.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Like Olubi, even though he wasn't necessarily a defensive player necessarily, he was more a special teamer. He still had an impact. And I remember those block punts. Block punts, I think, are one of the most underrated aspects of football. That if you return that for a touchdown, that is just as many points on the board as if you drive 99 yards down the field and score a touchdown. And when you have a guy has that fast twitch off the line and can get to the punter or the kicker, that's something that's very valuable. And I don't know. It is going to suck seeing Olubi go. And I think, as you mentioned, it's another linebacker that the Colts don't have now. And you look at the linebacking room, it is really disgusting right now. As many of these comments are mentioning, it's just you don't have any confidence in it. I'm not going to say that some of these guys aren't capable of the job. I think that Jalen Carley's could be good, but at the same time, it's just you need more faces in there and guys that maybe have some experience, or you need a really good rookie that you are fully confident in can play linebacker.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't have a first rounder, so I'm not saying you can't find somebody who could do that. Guys that stand. I mean, my personal favorite is Jacob Rodriguez. That's the kind of guy you could throw in there, and he could start right away. But you can't rely on that. And yes, after, like, let's see, I'm trying to think. I put it in the article. You got Jalen Carlies, Austin Ajike, and then I promise you, Colts fans, the next three guys that I say after that, you're not going to know who the hell they are. I mean, the Colts do not have anything at linebacker right now. In fact, I'm going to, I'll go ahead and let me go and pull up my piece here. Here it is. Yeah, so after Alubi's departure to the Raiders, you are looking at Austin Ajike, Jalen Carlies, Joseph Vaughn, John Bullock, and of course the household name Devin Verasuk. Guys that you can absolutely not rely on. None of those guys would you feel comfortable putting out there on the field. And I'm glad you brought up Jalen Carlies, because obviously fifth-round pick, converted safety in Missouri to a linebacker, incredible coverage ability, but he couldn't stay healthy, and Anarumo didn't put him on the field. I mean, when he was healthy, he had one tackle last year. So this is definitely going to be interesting to see what they do. I like that I can see the daylight out of your windows, Drake. Did you move your camera so we couldn't see the body being dragged across the grass? Yeah, so you can see my neighbors walking out here in Patrick last week. Got the chat going and laughing because they were worried that my neighbor was going to come out of his house with a body in a bag. But no, Ricky, I don't think that's going to happen. But this is South Bend. You never know. But yeah, it'll be really interesting because this is a bigger loss than I think people realize. So now we're going to get to a brief little recap of the re-signings, and I think it was let's see, Teresa Willis Johnson. I think, yeah. So she asked, why did we bring Mo Alie-Cox back? I'll tell you why. Because he is just like Segun Alubi. He is incredibly valuable. There's two things that stand out, well, three really, that stand out about Mo Alie-Cox and why he is just an incredibly valuable piece of this team. Number one is the very simple one. Absolutely fantastic teammate. Great locker room guy. He's just good to have. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if Tyler Warren went to Mo Alie-Cox and learned a whole bunch of stuff from him. Because, while Tyler Warren was fantastic, got a Pro Bowl, broke the rookie record for receptions in a Colts uniform, Mo Alie-Cox is a natural-born leader, and his story is incredible. Basketball player at Virginia Commonwealth. They don't have a football program. He gets no pro day, not drafted, and now he's carved out a damn near 10-year career with one team. Two is he is one of the premier blocking tight ends in the NFL. He is a very good run blocker, especially off the edge. He seals things really well, helps out Jonathan Taylor pop off some runs. And he's a ridiculous red zone target. I mean, out of 127 catches, 16 of those are for touchdowns, which is like 1 out of every 7 times he hauls in a pass, it's for a touchdown. And when you stand like 6'7", you weigh like 270 pounds, and you can run an under like a 4.8 40-yard dash. I mean, that is just invaluable. So what'd you think about this re-signing? I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts keep him in the Circle City till he retires, honestly.
Yeah, it didn't shock me. It seems to be the trend with Colts tight ends. They just come and they stay. And no matter who it is, if you can play, you're going to find a role in Indy. I mean, we saw it with Jack Doyle all the time. Chris Ballard loves to talk about Jack Doyle. I love to talk about Jack Doyle. Everyone loved Jack Doyle. I think everybody loves Mo Alie-Cox. I mean, he's a big dude. He's a great blocker. I love how the Colts use him in like very key scenarios. That's the thing is I remember there was this play. I forget who the Colts were playing at the time. But Zaire Franklin lined up at fullback, and everyone thought, oh, Zaire Franklin's going to get the ball. But Mo Alie-Cox just runs a go route, like 30 yards down the field. It's fourth down. He gets a free first down because nobody's expecting Mo Alie-Cox to just go streak downfield. And so, like, that's the type of plays that he can make is if you are a blocker 99% of the time, well, that other 1% of the time, you might be getting the football because nobody thinks you're going to be getting the football. So I think Mo Alie-Cox has value. And even though as a receiver, he's probably lost a bit of speed over the years, he's still a big, big guy that can block. And we know that this offense runs through Jonathan Taylor. We know that Jonathan Taylor probably understands how Mo Alie-Cox blocks. And so I think all these things factor into him coming back for another year.
Yeah, I love Mo Alie-Cox, all about it. When he got re-signed, I was incredibly happy. And you can't stress enough in the NFL when you have a serious locker room presence like him who is willing to put in the work. And like I said, the story that he's got, there's very few players that can say that they did not play college football and that they just show up in the NFL. And most of them have been tight ends. So this next one, pretty similar, only younger, probably a little less of an impact player as a receiver, and that's Drew Ogletree. Now, of course, Drew Ogletree is equally as good of a blocker as Mo Alie-Cox. Now, the thing that makes Drew Ogletree a little bit, less than Mo Alie-Cox is he's got an issue with dropping the football. But this one wasn't as surprising as I thought it would be if they kept him. Young guy, does a lot of he really helps out the ground attack. And look, when you've got three tight ends, one is a star like Warren, and you've got two veterans behind him, both can block and both are red zone threats, and you put two or three of them on a field, I mean, that really that makes the defense think, are they going to run? Is it play action? Is it going to be a pass? Are they going to get one of these two or three tight ends involved? So really, I think this wasn't necessarily about, oh, we need Drew Ogletree. I think that it's more about, hey, Ogletree makes Warren, Alie-Cox, and him a nice trifecta at tight end.
Yeah, we know how much Shane Steichen loves using 12 and 13 personnel and lining up two or three tight ends because the Colts, I think when they had the most success last year is when they used play action. And so when you have two or three tight ends on the field, it just makes things a lot harder for the defense to read, I believe, pre-snap. And so I think this one didn't shock me a ton either. I think having the same tight end room, continuity, blocking, it just makes sense. He's cheap. It's not like he's going to, cost the Colts a ton of money. He probably wasn't receiving a ton of interest from the outside. And, it's good to see a 6th-round pick get another contract. Those are the type of things that you want to see. So I think it's good that he's coming back for another year.
Yeah, I mean, he dealt with some wild injury issues to start his career, and he's been able to get back from those. He even dealt with a wild personal issue that I'll never forget hearing about, and he got slammed and everything else. Turns out it wasn't what we all thought. Drew Ogletree's been through some crap, and he's been through some crap mentally and physically, and yet here he is still playing with the Colts, and he's poised to make an impact. This last one is one of my favorites, and it's because the guy is one of the biggest wide receiver draft busts I think I've seen in some time. Let me see here. Yeah, so this player has been in the NFL for 10 seasons. He was drafted literally 23rd overall by the Minnesota Vikings. He has 111 catches to show for it. But that's not what we're talking about here, and that's the one and only Laquon Treadwell. So the reason that I love this one is because a lot of times when you got these first-round busts, they don't necessarily stay in the NFL. They really don't. I mean, we've seen it with guys like Manziel. We've seen it with others as well, where they just kind of phase out. Or a guy like Zach Wilson, where he's just fighting for a roster spot right now. Laquon Treadwell has completely accepted his role as a practice squad wide receiver. And something that's interesting, and I saw this in the preseason, and this might sound ridiculous, but there's something to be said when he gets on the field. And I don't care if it's second, third team. I don't give a damn. He looks so much faster than everyone else, better route runner than everyone else. And so when you apply that kind of talent to practice and you have to play against that guy, he's going to give you some great looks. I know Shane Steichen he loves Laquon Treadwell. This one isn't necessarily great for the regular season on the field, but this is the kind of guy that's going to push the hell out of you in practice, and he's going to really sharpen the skills of those defensive backs.
Yeah, and I think another piece of it is after trading away Michael Pittman, you need another veteran in there, because at that point, Alec Pierce is pretty much the most seasoned veteran in that wide receiving room for the Colts. It's like him, Josh Downs, Ashton Doolin's in there as well. He's another long. It's probably Ashton Doolin. But that being said, Treadwell, 10 years of NFL experience, he can help coach these young guys to success. Even though Treadwell hasn't had his own success, he has plenty of experience, and carving out a role for over a decade is incredibly impressive, whether you be even if you're a bust, and that's something to say about his work ethic, is that he's willing to do whatever it takes to be on the team and to help the team. So I think that even though this one isn't a needle mover, and he may never touch the field on offense, I think that the guys love him in the locker room. I think that this is one that isn't very surprising, and you can be used on special teams. I don't know. It's not a needle mover, but it's not surprising either. And I'm glad that he gets another year to be with the Colts. And as you mentioned, on the practice field, that's where he's most valuable.
Yeah, and you can't stress that enough. I mean, practice squad guys do not get any limelight, and the fact that you're a first round bust, you weren't, your career didn't pan out. Absolutely brutal stretch with Minnesota. I mean, the Vikings fans could not stand him just because he couldn't play up to that first round tag. But good re-signing, and if for nothing else, it helps your team prepare at the highest level. So now we're going to get to the new additions. We've got 5. We're going to start with, I believe it's McKeel Clemons, or maybe it's Michael Clemons with the E before the A. That's been confusing the crap out of me. But so this one isn't – I love this signing because you can kind of put this guy all over the defensive line. He hasn't put up wild numbers. You got 8.5 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. You got some QB hits mixed in there through 4 seasons with the Jets. But, I mean, this guy's position designation, dude, it has been defensive end, defensive line, left outside linebacker. In fact, he started all 17 games for the Jets in 2024. That's where he got 4.5 sacks, 34 tackles. This dude is – 2 things. He is incredibly intimidating, just a mountain of a man, and he's got an attitude. I mean, I'll never forget when the Browns beat the Jets, and what do you see Clemons doing on the sideline? Pointing to the fans, literally pointing at them, each one, and dropping the F-bomb. So that's the kind of guy that I want on my defensive line. The only question is, how big of an impact is he going to have? Because so far in his career, he's definitely not been overwhelming.
Yeah, I saw a post. Now, I don't want to poop on the party, but he has over the course of his Jets career, he had more penalties than sacks. He had 10 penalties, 8.5 sacks. He had more missed tackles than tackles for loss. So both of those things. I mean, listen, I think that, as you mentioned, his versatility could be useful for Lou Anarumo. I think that him being able to play on the inside and the outside is something that will benefit the Colts defensive line. At the same time, is this guy going to be a startable player? Because that's still what the Colts are missing on the defensive line. Realistically, at edge, you have Latu and you have nobody else. So, I mean, Clemons, I think he'll be a rotational piece, but the Colts need guys that can get sacks. He hasn't shown that completely just yet. I mean, to start 17 games and only get 4.5 sacks, that's not ideal. That being said, he's on the Jets. So when you're on the Jets and you're losing all the time, teams are running the ball against you. So maybe you're just not getting as many opportunities to get sacks. So hopefully he can be like a 5-sack guy. I think that's what the Colts need out of him. His price tag isn't huge, but 5 sacks and this signing would be considered a success in my eyes.
Boy, Bruce, man, you are really, really not about Chris Ballard, man. I don't blame anybody for having reservations about this free agency cycle. I totally get it. But yeah, as far as Clemons goes, you're talking about a guy who is being given an opportunity to this is his prove that you're a starter.
Yeah.
And is he going to play defensive end? Is he going to play defensive tackle? Given how much they lack depth right now, even if they go out there and trade for Jonathan Grenard, okay, you still need something there. And I think that given the fact that the Colts traded for Colby Wooden, that's going to be one of your backups. We'll get to the next guy here. The Colts have acquired 3 new defensive tackles. So it wouldn't surprise me if they took Clemons and said, hey, we're going to give you a position change. And under defensive line coach Marion Hobby, I mean, he's not a big defensive tackle. He's not the kind of guy that's going to plug gaps. He is more of an athletic build. So he's got that ability, I think, to play multiple positions. But we'll have to see because this one I do like real quick. I do like where's it at? Yeah, he's an all bark and no bite type of guy. We'll see. He definitely likes to talk a lot and a lot of trash. So this next one is definitely a veteran who won 3 Super Bowls with the Chiefs, knows a winning culture. He played 8 years in Kansas City, and that's Derrick Nnadi. He actually has 98 starts out of 130 games played, only 5 sacks, but he is not a sack guy at all. He's much more of your Grover Stewart type, where he's just there to plug gaps. He's there to force offensive lines to adjust. And really, he's kind of like a point guard. He's opening up opportunities for the rest of the defense. So this one, I actually didn't mind it because this is a guy who, like I said, he's played alongside guys like Chris Jones, dude. And he started plenty of games. In fact, if we're talking about 2022, like for example, 2019, 16 games out of 16 played. 22 and 23, 17 and 17. And last year he started 11 games. So, I mean, he's definitely trusted by a team that's been the most successful franchise over the last decade. So what did you think of this one? He's absolutely not an impact player, but he could help open up other opportunities for the rest of the defensive scheme.
Yeah, I think it's a good signing, especially if you're worried a little bit about DeForest Buckner maybe getting injured again. I think that's a real possibility. I mean, last 2 seasons he's gotten placed on IR at some point. They weren't long stints, but he was there. And when you have a guy like DeForest Buckner go down, you need someone who can start in his place. I think Nnadi could be that guy. At the same time, I don't know if they would start Nnadi and Grover Stewart next to each other. Those are 2 guys that are more run defenders, as you mentioned. So I don't know if they would go with that. At the same time, Stewart is also aging himself. So I think Nnadi, having that Super Bowl caliber, type of player on your team, it can help the defensive line, especially when there's some young guys there still. I was surprised that they did make this move after trading for Colby Wooden with the Packers. I think that was somewhat surprising, but at the same time, I think they are just going to go on a rotational basis again and use these big guys as run stuffers who can just take out offensive linemen, as many as they possibly can.
Yeah, and there's a clear goal here from the Colts. They have gone so aggressive after the interior defensive linemen. I mean, they are really going hard after those guys. I'm very intrigued by Colby Wooden. I mean, he led all Green Bay defensive tackles last year in tackles, and he was very active. But yeah, I mean, we'll see kind of how Clemons and Nnadi are used, but I think that, what you said there, he's definitely a run stuffer, and he's one of those guys that you just trust to cause chaos, honestly, on the offensive line and take up as much blocking as possible, and then it opens up opportunities. And there are defensive schemes where you literally take a guy and you just have him just pull as many linemen into the fray as possible, and you send a linebacker right through that gap. So it'll be intriguing. These next two, one of them was notable because of his I guess his main woman, and the other one is an up and comer, I think. But we're going to go with Jonathan Owens. And for those of you that don't know who Jonathan Owens is, yes, I think that he is the boyfriend of Simone Biles. But this is a football podcast, so we're not going to talk about gymnastics. But Jonathan Owens, he has fallen off in recent seasons, but man, oh man, like you mentioned with the Texans, there was a time when this guy was putting up some great numbers. I mean, 2022, 125 tackles, 4 passes defended, started all 17 games. He saw plenty of the Colts. And, of course, then you're talking about Green Bay the next season. He has a fumble recovery return for touchdown, 84 tackles. He has 3 more pass breakups, forces a fumble. Of course, when he went to Chicago, everything kind of like fell off for him. But he's 7 years in. The guy is only 20 – or no, he's only 30. So it's not necessarily that he's on the opposite end of his prime. But I just think at this point, based off of, what we've seen, I think he is the Rodney Thomas replacement. I think that he's a guy that is going to be more of that rotational piece. But what did you make of this signing? Honestly, I wasn't mad about it at all. He's got talent, and he's been there, done that, and he's started at a high level and put up numbers.
Yeah, he's played a long time, and I think the experience is probably why the Colts got him. I think, like you mentioned, he's probably not going to be that starting guy. He's not going to fill that Nick Cross role. But I think he could fill that Rodney Thomas role where he comes in, occasionally has his moments. I hope he pans out well. Again, though, this isn't one of those signings where you think, oh, wow, this guy's going to make a huge impact on the defense. So I think that's just – there's still a lot of time left for that signing to happen. At the same time, every week there's more and more players off the board. So – I don't know. I think Owens is a good signing, but again, he's just another rotational piece probably.
Yeah, and hey, the thing that everyone needs to realize is that free agency, man, it is so rare to land a Trey Hendrickson. It's so rare to land, a guy that's a superstar. They get gobbled up quick, and there's not that many of them. I mean, if the Bengals, if he hadn't come off of an injury and Trey Hendrickson had played all 17 games and put up 10 sacks, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals kept him. It's just a lot of free agency is rounding out the roster. Okay, it's not about signing 4 or 5 difference makers. You can't afford it. So guys like Owens make a lot of sense. And I mean, you needed safety help. You lost Cross, you lost Thomas. So that makes sense. I think that he's going to play well. He might even see some special teams action. We'll see. But this last one, I have been looking into this guy a lot more. I was like, who in the hell is this at first? And then I started looking at our own Zach Hicks, absolute film genius. I mean, he's a professor of breaking down film. This is a guy that takes good angles. He's got prowess as a run defender. He's got upside in coverage. He's played special teams. He's also returned a kick for touchdown. If it wasn't for a bunch of migraines last season, he was on an upward trajectory as a safety for the Dallas Cowboys, and that's Juanyeh Thomas. I love this signing. This is one of those Samson Ebukam signings. I've got this gut feeling. I fully expect Indianapolis to roll with either him or Hunter Wohler alongside Cam Bynum. I think that Juanyeh Thomas and Hunter Wohler are going to compete in training camp. But even if he doesn't beat out Hunter Wohler or vice versa, I think that is a fantastic rotational piece, whoever loses that battle.
Yeah.
Now, could they still draft somebody and they win the starting position? Sure. Could they sign another free agent? Who knows? But I think this one is underrated. And I know that he didn't have numbers last year that'll blow your mind. But, man, you look between the lines. This is a guy also guys, he's only got 3 years in the NFL. He's only 25. And as long as those migraines, which I think that's easier to manage those than an actual injury, as long as they don't set him back, man, I think that you might be getting a guy who could, given the right opportunity, I mean, he could become a serious starting safety.
Yeah, in his media availability, he said that the migraines issue has been resolved. So, I mean, I think that from the talent that we saw with the Cowboys, I think that he's someone that could develop into that safety role. I again, it's tough because you're giving the job pretty much, if you're doing it with Wohler or Thomas, you're giving the job to an inexperienced player.
Yep.
And you're taking a gamble either way. But at the same time, you got to save money as well somewhere on the field. And I think if you're going to do that, like safety isn't the worst place to do that, especially when you're already paying the secondary so much money when it comes to Ward and Sauce Gardner and Cam Bynum. So it doesn't shock me that the Colts are not trying to spend a lot of money on another safety because realistically, they don't have that much money available to do that. So I think they have other pressing needs. So I think Thomas, from what we saw and his numbers last year, he's a guy that could start. And I think that wouldn't be shocking at all if he ends up as the starter.
Yeah, and real quick, guys, in the chat, you guys realize you're all Colts fans, right? Like, just saying, just saying. But you're justified in the negative, and you're justified in the positive. You're always justified with this team because there is no team in the NFL, Sean, maybe outside of the Cleveland Browns because of their baffling decisions, but there's no team in the NFL that is quite the soap opera that the Indianapolis Colts are. So that's why their fans just do not know they don't know what to do. But yeah, Juanyeh Thomas, I really like this signing. I think that there's serious upside. I've got a gut feeling that they may have just found a hidden gem. So we'll have to see. You never know. This guy has not had a full starting role, but last year you got glimpses of a guy who could make it happen, and he's only 25. So this last one, and everyone in the chat, please let me know. How do you feel about the roster right now? Because, again, people need to understand that free agency goes all year. It goes all year long. Okay, so you could still sign some impact guys later on in the offseason. But right now, how do you feel about the roster?
Geez. Defensively, I mean, if you look on paper on defense, it's just not good. It's just not as good as it once was. I mean, can you even say it was that good last year? On paper, yes, but health-wise, no, because by the end of the year, Sauce Gardner wasn't playing half the games. Mooney Ward wasn't playing half the games. You have to have health and availability, as they all say, is the best ability. So I think defensively, you look at the roster, you have some concerns about whether these guys will be able to stay on the field, and in some positions like linebacker or defensive end, will they be able to produce even if they are on the field? Offensively, I think the roster's fine. Probably use another wide receiver. I think the offensive line is perfectly fine. I think Jalen Travis will be just fine at right tackle. I think you have a young, good core of guys there. I think Jonathan Taylor is fine. I would like to see the Colts bring back Amir Abdullah. I think he looked really good. On special teams as well, I think he looked good. So I think as a pass-catching back, he could fill in for Taylor, give him a breather on some downs. Just the defense, the linebacker specifically, as Tony said, it is probably the worst in the league right now. But there are a lot of guys in the draft that I think will fall to the second round that I think could start. And I think, as we've mentioned, Jacob Rodriguez, that's one of the guys. Jake Goldday. Kyle Lewis could be another guy. Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. These are four guys that I believe could come in and actually make an impact on this Colts roster from day one. So the Colts are kind of lucky that, this is the year that they don't have a first round pick, because I think that there is talent that will fall to the second, maybe even the third round, where they could be startable. After that, though, it gets a little sketchy. And the other thing is there are too many holes in the draft, like to fill in the draft right now. So I think free agent signings they're going to have to make some more moves. They will. Um, I don't know. I think linebacker, though, that's my biggest point of concern right now.
Yeah, and I think somebody mentioned that it's the worst linebacker room in the league right now. Absolutely. I mean, if you were to start the season right now, the Colts would be trotting out Jalen Carlies and Austin Ajike. So hell no. Like that's just not going to work. And I also love how you brought up Mooney Ward. One more concussion, he's retiring. Sauce Gardner comes in, already had issues coming in off the trade, strains his calf. DeForest Buckner, he was up and down, kind of contemplating it. Of course, he's probably going to end up staying. But you even look at Jalen Carlies, he was injured quite a bit. I mean, so this is a team that they get hurt a lot. They just do. The Colts are historically bad at staying healthy. We saw that last season too. But I'm right there with you. I think that the defense looks really bad. There's going to be things done about it, guys. Don't pack in the season yet. I guarantee you, regardless of what you feel about how you feel about him, Chris Ballard fully understands that the defense isn't where it needs to be, and he also understands that a guy like Arden Key is not going to be a game changer. So we'll have to see. I wouldn't be surprised if they're definitely in. This is true. They are in on the Jonathan Grenard sweepstakes. The Colts have communicated with the Vikings, as other teams have. But, I mean, do not be surprised if they trade Anthony Richardson to the Vikings with a draft pick, or maybe a couple later draft picks or something, some kind of package where the Vikings will have Richardson compete with J.J. McCarthy, because they're out on J.J. I think he is a complete bust. He was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year. If I'm Kevin O'Connell, I'm like, let's have these two compete. And then if Murray doesn't work out and we can sit there and have Richardson learn behind him, I would not be surprised if they execute that trade. But, guys, that is our show. A heated discussion in the chat. Holy Toledo, guys. I love the energy. But like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow Indianapolis Colts on SI, and on X we have at @Colts_SI. Subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube. Click the bell to turn on all the notifications. If you want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, I've got us on Apple, Spotify, wherever else you listen, and so much more. Guys, keep your eyes glued to our free agency tracker. Me and Sean and the rest of the boys, we've been keeping up on that thing like crazy, and it is detailed. It's up to date. It is right up to the Shagun Alubi departure. We've been staying on top of it. So keep your eyes there. And of course, any other moves that happen, we're going to have them right here on the show next week. But until then, enjoy your week, guys. And hey, you know what? Do something for yourselves, and maybe sip on a beer and don't think about Chris Ballard. Really, lower those stress levels, guys, because that's the kind of thing that's going to raise your blood pressure thinking about that guy. So have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you guys again soon.